This man once held the secrets of kings, the trust of popes, and the fate of entire republics in his hands. He walked among powerful men who wore smiles like masks and concealed daggers in velvet sleeves. He was admired, envied, hunted, and betrayed. But while kingdoms fell and alliances shattered, he remained untouched. Not because he was the strongest or the most ruthless, but because no one could read him. You've been told to be open, to speak your mind, to share your feelings. They tell you honesty builds trust. Vulnerability makes you strong. That's a lie. A beautifully wrapped lie, designed to disarm you. Because the more they know how you feel, the more they know how to break you. Machiavelli understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. He knew that when you reveal everything, you give people a map straight to your weaknesses. And he decided that if he was going to survive in a world of daggers and betrayal, he would have to become untouchable. And if you want to live free of manipulation, so will you. They say emotions make you human. They say you should speak your truth. They say your vulnerability is your strength. But Niccolò Machiavelli didn't listen to any of that, because he discovered a brutal truth that most people will never admit. The more you feel, the more they can control you. The more you reveal, the easier you become to predict, to provoke, to manipulate. Emotions are not merely feelings. They are signals. They are tells. They are open doors into your defenses. And Machiavelli's entire life taught him one lesson. The man who cannot be read cannot be ruled. From the day you're born, they train you to believe that openness is honesty, that feeling is truth, that sharing is connection. But every time you exposed your heart, someone used it. You forgave too quickly and they walked over you again. You overreacted and they called you unstable. You confessed your secrets and they stored them like ammunition. And each time, a piece of you was chipped away. Your emotions didn't set you free. They handed other people the keys to your cage. Machiavelli refused to live in a world where his heart could be held hostage. He was not born untouchable. He became untouchable. And the price was everything he once believed. Machiavelli didn't live in a world of therapy sessions and social media vulnerability. He lived in courts crawling with betrayal, bribery, and blood. He watched friends become enemies, allies change sides, kings fall because they trusted the wrong smile. In that world, a single visible weakness could be fatal. And he knew that if he was to survive, he couldn't afford to be emotional, not even a little. Because in the corridors of power, men are driven by two primal forces, love and fear. And Machiavelli chose fear. But to be feared, you must feel less. Because emotions make you predictable. Your anger can be provoked. Your silence can be read. Your affection can be weaponized. Emotional people are reactive. They speak before thinking, move before observing, confess before calculating. They chase feelings and validation, placing their self-worth in the hands of others. And once someone knows which buttons to push, they don't need to outsmart you. They only need to trigger you. Throughout history, the most dangerous men and women shared one quality. They were still, unbothered by slander, unmoved by affection, detached from how others felt about them, not cold, but self-contained. And that's what Machiavelli sought to become. Not a monster, not a robot, but a man who could not be moved from the outside. Because once you stop feeling reactively, you start acting strategically. You become the person others watch carefully because they can't read you. You say less. You hear more. You observe everything without reacting to anything. And that kind of control terrifies the emotional world. But isn't that just being numb? There's a difference between emotional suppression and emotional control. Suppression is avoidance. Control is precision. You don't pretend not to feel. You master when, how, and why you show what you feel. And if the moment isn't strategic, you feel it privately, but you don't display it publicly. That is what separates warriors from victims. Machiavelli didn't want to become numb. He wanted to become untouchable. So he trained for it, in his thoughts, in his posture, in his silence. Because when you learn to feel nothing on command, you don't just gain power. You become power. Machiavelli's transformation didn't start as philosophy. It started as survival. He was a man who had devoted his life to the Florentine Republic. He climbed ranks, negotiated with kings, popes, and tyrants. He offered loyalty to those he thought worthy. And then in an instant, they cast him out, imprisoned him, tortured him, erased his entire political life in a few short days. Not because he failed, but because power shifted and loyalty meant nothing. That was the first lesson he learned. They only love you until you become inconvenient. Most people after that would break. They'd cry, beg for their position back, plead for forgiveness. But not Machiavelli. He watched. He learned. He detached. He realized that emotion makes you loyal to people who would discard you the moment it suits them. So he decided, if I'm going to suffer, it will not be for love. It will be for strategy. Every betrayal begins with the same sentence, I thought they wouldn't. I thought they wouldn't lie. I thought they wouldn't leave. I thought they wouldn't do this to me. But that thought comes from trust. And trust is built from emotion. Machiavelli realized a colder truth. People are loyal only until loyalty costs them something. And when the price grows too high, they flip. Emotion doesn't prevent betrayal. It blinds you to the signs of it. And Machiavelli vowed never to be blind again. His turning point wasn't rage. It was realization. He wrote The Prince not as vengeance, but as clarity. He didn't lament how unfair the world was. He documented how power actually works, and how most people simply aren't strong enough to admit it. People think they're emotionally intelligent because they feel deeply. But true intelligence is feeling deeply, and still acting with cold clarity. Machiavelli trained himself for that. So how do you go from emotionally reactive to emotionally unshakable? It doesn't start with motivational quotes. It starts with your pain. You look back at your past. Who used you? Who lied to you? Who disappeared the moment they no longer needed you? What did you feel? Shame, grief, rage, confusion? That pain is not merely trauma. It's data. It's your training ground. Every betrayal is a message. Every disappointment is a reminder that your expectations have become emotional hostages. Machiavelli didn't numb himself. He studied his pain until it stopped controlling him. He dissected human behavior. He rewired his instincts. He transformed heartbreak into pattern recognition. Now, when someone smiles too quickly, praises too loudly, agrees too eagerly, he doesn't feel warmth. He feels warning. Because once you learn from your pain, you stop stepping into the same traps. You can't build immunity by hiding. You build it through exposure. Machiavelli didn't isolate himself. He stayed close to power, to corruption, to deceit. But instead of absorbing it emotionally, he observed it surgically. He trained his mind to watch, not react, to record, not collapse, to remain still while others spilled everything they felt. Over time, emotions no longer made decisions for him. They became signals. Layers of intel, not steering wheels. That's what you're building now. Not apathy, but emotional sovereignty. The ability to feel without being owned by those feelings. Machiavelli didn't want to escape emotion for peace. He wanted power. Because once you master your emotions, you automatically master other people. But because most people are still controlled by the very things you've neutralized. They want to be liked. They crave to feel understood. They react when triggered. They speak when nervous. They confess when afraid. But you no longer do any of that. You've become still. And in that stillness, you become the authority in the room. Look around any group dynamic. The one who speaks first is trying to impress. The one who interrupts is afraid of being forgotten. The one who explains too much is unsure they'll be understood. The one who needs to be heard is already losing. Now watch the one who waits. They don't rush. They don't explain. They don't react. But when they finally speak, everyone listens, not because of volume, but because of gravity. That's Machiavellian presence. He who controls himself controls others. Because your self-control becomes their emotional mirror. Stay calm, and they start second-guessing their own tone. Don't flinch, and they wonder if they went too far. Don't chase closure, and they spiral, trying to figure out why. The more detached you become, the more power others accidentally give you. Machiavelli understood a powerful truth. When you speak less, People panic in the silence. And to break that tension, they start talking. They confess. They justify. They over-explain. They reveal secrets you never even asked for. Because silence feels like judgment. It feels like power. It feels like you know something they don't. So instead of reading them, you let them read themselves out loud. And the best part, you never gave anything away. People expect cause and effect. They insult you, you react. They guilt you, you apologize. They ghost you, you chase them. That's how emotional people operate. But when you stop reacting, you become a pattern breaker. They no longer know what you're thinking, how you'll respond, or when you'll move. You've introduced uncertainty. And uncertainty breaks control. You're no longer playing their game. You control the board. Let's be clear. Detachment is not apathy. You still care. You still want things. You still feel. But you've removed the external access to those feelings. People no longer get to predict your next move, read your face, sense your weakness, or time their manipulation. Now, only you know what's happening inside you. Everyone else is left guessing. And guesswork always breeds fear. Because the person they cannot read is the person they believe is more powerful than they are. Ever notice that the quietest person in the room is often the one nobody wants to cross? That's not charisma. That's emotional control expressed physically. When you speak slowly, react sparingly, move with purpose, hold eye contact without tension, and sit still when others squirm, you broadcast dominance without saying a single word. You're not trying to impress. You're not trying to prove yourself. You're simply anchored while everyone else drifts, desperate to stabilize themselves in your presence. And the more they drift, the more they orbit around you. Machiavelli didn't meditate on a mountain. He trained in courts, in conversations, in conflicts. Because emotional control isn't built in peace. It's forged in war. You don't learn to stay calm when you're alone. You learn it when you're challenged, tested, provoked, and you choose silence anyway. This is where detachment becomes discipline. Someone insults you, pause. They try to provoke you with guilt, pause. They beg, cry, accuse, manipulate, pause. Machiavelli trained the pause like a weapon. Because in that small space between stimulus and response, you regain control. Not just of your words, but of the entire room. You dictate the tempo. And he who dictates the tempo, dictates the direction. He who speaks second knows the field. That's not merely strategy. That's emotional economy. Let them spend energy. You conserve yours. That alone makes you more powerful. You don't react to every tone shift. You don't internalize every insult. You don't collapse at every sign of rejection. You watch. You catalog. You study. Not to attack, but to understand. Because most people reveal their entire psychological blueprint in the way they try to make you feel. If they guilt you, they're insecure. If they flatter you, they want control. If they ignore you, they're begging for attention. Machiavelli treated emotion like intelligence gathering. Every emotional reaction is a map to someone's core fear, and every map is an advantage if you're quiet enough to read it. You owe no one emotional clarity. If someone says, "You seem off," "Are you okay?" you say, "I'm processing." If they ask, "What are you thinking right now?" you say, "A lot." But nothing urgent. That's how you train your ambiguity muscle. Not by being fake, but by saying less than they can use. Because clarity creates emotional vulnerability. Ambiguity creates protection. When a conversation is no longer productive, you leave it. Not with drama. Not with explanation. Just with distance. You stop replying. You stop engaging. You stop validating. Because every unnecessary response is a withdrawal from your emotional bank. Machiavelli would never let someone trap him in an endless loop. He'd disengage silently. Because power doesn't need a closing statement. It only needs to vanish. You'll find yourself in awkward silences. People staring at you, demanding explanations. Your instinct will be to fill the silence, to defend your intentions, to explain your motives. Machiavelli would feel that same pressure and remain unmoved. Because discomfort is a test. And most people fail it by overcorrecting. You win by letting others drown in tension while you remain still. Eventually, you won't have to fake it anymore. You won't have to rehearse detachment. You'll simply live it. You won't get triggered because they simply can't reach you. That's when you've gone from discipline to dominance. You've trained yourself to feel nothing when it matters most, and everything only when it serves you. Machiavelli's methods were not made for temples. They were forged in councils, betrayals, courts. And your modern world is no different. Now you're tested not just in private, but publicly every day. Social media designed to provoke instant reactions. Workplaces built on emotional politics rather than skill. Relationships that weaponize guilt, silence, and drama. And in that chaos, emotional stillness becomes your shield, your sword, your signal. This isn't about being cold. It's about evolution. You're not rejecting emotion. You're commanding it, channeling it, storing it for when it's useful. You're no longer a servant to your feelings. You're their architect. If Machiavelli could leave you one rule, it would not be, don't feel. It would be, don't let them know you feel unless it strengthens your position. Because real power is not in feeling nothing. It's in being indecipherable. No one can destroy what they cannot define. No one can control what they cannot read. And no one can manipulate what refuses to flinch. That is how Machiavelli became untouchable. And now it's your turn. Because the truth Machiavelli discovered still echoes through every room of power, every negotiation, every quiet moment between two people deciding who leads and who follows. He knew that the world is not kind to the open-hearted, but it bows to the unreadable. He knew that influence doesn't belong to those who speak the loudest, but to those whose silence speaks volumes. And that's your path now. To become untouchable doesn't mean feeling less. It means controlling when, where, and how you reveal the deepest parts of yourself. It means writing your own script while others perform theirs. And that, above all, is the ultimate power.